أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبو القاسم المصطفى محمد صلى على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. This time period that we are in, the ayyam of ma'dudat or layal al-ashr, according to some of the mufassirin, is these 10 nights or these specific days that we are remembering Allah, worshipping Him in order to prepare ourselves for the day of Arafah and Eid, inshallah. And we see many times that our Eid al-Fitr or Eid al-Adha, it's a celebration that after a person has performed either Hajj or Shahr Ramadan, for example, has fasted, that it is a Eid for them because they are forgiven. And now it is a time to celebrate. So our hearts are with the Hujjaj right now. We ask Allah to make us, inshallah, of the Hujjaj of Allah's house, inshallah, next year. And we're very fortunate to have some from this community be there right now, alhamdulillah. And they are sending us pictures and making dua for us right now in Masjid al-Haram, alhamdulillah. But because we have a duty to our Imams, and before the Hajj started, the last day of Dhul Qa'dah was the martyrdom of Imam Jawad alayhi salam. And we owe our Imams respect, and we have to remember them and learn from them. And it is one of the best ways to reach Allah. When you look at the life of Imam Jawad alayhi salam, our ninth Imam, you see that he was an Imam that was very special and unique. One is that Imam Rida alayhi salam, it is said that he had Imam Jawad alayhi salam at a very old age. At that time, 47 or 48 was an old age. And some were asking, why is Imam Rida, the 8th Imam, not having a child? Is he really the Imam or not? So some became and joined other groups that did wuquf, and they either found someone else to be their Imam, or they stopped Imamat, for example, and continued with Imam Qadhim alayhi salam or others, for example. But when Imam Jawad alayhi salam was born at this time, 47 or 48, Imam Jawad Rida alayhi salam says in the narration that no mawlid, no birth of any baby has been born with this amount of blessings and this amount of barakah. So Imam Jawad alayhi salam is known for the Imam who is full of barakat. Many of you have visited Qadhimiyya. Many of you are actually from there. Some of you might be even from Qadhimain. And you see that at that time, how many people go to Bab al-Hawa'ij, Imam Qadhim alayhi salam, or they go to Bab al-Murad, Imam Jawad alayhi salam, and get their Hawa'ij answered. How many people do tawassul to Imam Jawad alayhi salam, the affairs of the dunya, for example, marriage, work. And you see how mujarrab, how much experience there has been when a person remembers Imam Jawad alayhi salam. The child who Imam Rida alayhi salam says, there has no child been born with so much barakah as him. There are different ulama and scholars who interpret the barakah of Imam Jawad alayhi salam. Some say it is because he saved Imamat. Some say it is because he saved Imamat. Because when Imam Rida alayhi salam passed away, and you see that Imam Jawad alayhi salam, at the year of about 100, I believe in 195 he was born. At the year of 200 after Hijrah, Imam Rida alayhi salam was forced to leave Medina. And he leaves Imam Jawad alayhi salam, he leaves his family all alone. And therefore this 5-year-old son that Imam Rida alayhi salam waited for so many years to have is all alone, and is not with him in Marv. After that, his father passes away, is martyred at year 203. So Imam Jawad is the first Imam to be at the age of 8. 8. And we have Imam Hadi alayhi salam at a young age, Imam around 8. Then we have the Imam Mahdi, become an Imam at the age of 5. But it became easier for the other Imams because Imam Jawad alayhi salam was the first to be at such a young age. And this was the main trial of the time of the people. See, brothers and sisters, as everything is going on perfectly and everything is very good, there's no test and trial to see who is the perfect follower of Ahlul Bayt. When there are trials and tribulations, then a person realizes and is able to prove their iman and prove themselves to say that I follow the Imam, even if he is at 8 years of age. But you look throughout history and you see that the knowledge that Imam Jawad alayhi salam had at such a young age, and he was tested, some say tens of thousands of questions he had. And look at the historical books, because he was the son-in-law of Ma'mun. One of his wives was al-Fadl, which was the daughter of Ma'mun, of the Khalifa. And they would bring scholars, and we'll talk about some of the debates of Imam Jawad alayhi salam. Again, just how his father, Imam Rida alayhi salam, debated so many individuals. Imam Jawad alayhi salam debated, but the difference is he is at a very young age. And you see that he wins all these great scholars at the time. Yahya, for example, Ibn Aktham, for example, or others, who was the Qadi al-Qudat. He wins them in debates. He brings very interesting narrations and words of wisdom. It's impossible for someone who has such a young age to have. So therefore, you see, it is a trial. But yet Allah has prepared us already for this trial, as we see that Allah has mentioned in the Quran. وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَى النَّحْلِ, for example. Allah mentions in the Quran that we have given revelation to the nahl, to the bee. So God is saying, I have given revelation to the bee to take from the mountains as homes. And then from that bee comes honey. And today we understand that what a bee does, the honeybee, and collects pollen, from flowers and produces honey. We see that this is impossible even today with the different machinery we have. If we took flowers today, for example, to make something honey, it's something that we cannot make. But who taught the bee how to perform this, for example? Who taught the bee to seek, for example, the flowers? So Allah says in the Quran, Awhayna, we have given revelation. So therefore, if Allah gives a bee revelation to make one of the very interesting shafa and cures of today, cannot Allah give knowledge to a human being? And you see throughout the Quran, Prophet Isa alayhi salam, through the Quran, when he was born, he is mentioning and he's speaking while he was born. So the same Allah that can give knowledge to a bee can give knowledge to Jesus, Prophet Jesus alayhi salam. Or the same Allah in the Quran that gave Yahya the hukm when he was sabi, when he was a child, can also give knowledge to Imam Jawad alayhi salam. Brothers and sisters, many of the questions that we have about imamat are already answered in the Holy Quran. When we talk about, for example, can an 8-year-old be an imam? You ask, well, how did Prophet Isa alayhi salam speak when he was a baby, for example? If you say, how did imams have knowledge of the unseen? Humans can't have knowledge of the unseen. Why did Prophet Isa alayhi salam mention, I will inform you of what's in your homes? If you say, for example, how can imams perform miracles or karamat? You say, how many insan, kamil, or perfect human beings, for example, in the Quran, prophets, they gave life to those who have died, like Prophet Isa alayhi salam. So many of these concepts of imamat are already inside the Quran. Or you see, for example, during the time of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, after he completes his kalamat and tests, then the Quran mentions that now you are an imam, for example. And what about my progeny? This promise does not go to the zalimeen, the oppressors, the sinners. So the imam comes from Allah already in the Quran. Some say, prove imamat in the Quran. Where is it? So Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, it talks about imamat is from Quran. 2, what are the characteristics of imamat from Quran? 2, they cannot sin. So Allah already speaks about how imamat is chosen. 3, of the main concepts of imamat. 1 is knowledge of God. God proves that the imam and prophets, for example, they get knowledge from him. 2, he is chosen from Allah. And 3, they cannot sin. All of this, in this way, is in the Holy Quran. But yet we see when Allah tries the people and tries them with an 8-year-old Imam. You see, some leave religion, those that did not have strong imamat. But you see some like Ali ibn Ja'far. See, I'm saying Ali ibn Ja'far, the son of Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam. 90-year-old scholar. 90-year-old scholar. He was, in reality, the brother of Imam Musa Kadhim, the uncle of Imam Rida, the great uncle of Imam Jawad. Some left imamat, but some like Ali ibn Ja'far, 90-year-old scholar, is with his people, and he comes and kisses the hand of Imam Jawad. He stands up, and people around him are wondering, you're a teacher, you're 90 years old, you're his great uncle. Great uncles don't usually give so much respect. And he says the reasoning for this is that Allah has given imamat to him. Allah has given imamat to Imam Jawad alayhi salam. So some during trials and tests are like Ali ibn Ja'far, that even though they have a following, they have an old age, they have lots of respect, they'll put this all at the disposal of the Imam, and others will try to take advantage, either not giving their homes, for example, taking homes, or say, for example, I am the representative of the Imam, or saying that, I'm going to leave, the 12er Shi'ism, I'm going to go to a different, for example, sect. So therefore, if you really think of this, you see that also there's a very similar resemblance of this to our age. That our main trial is also with the Imam. But yes, it's not as a young age, even though Imam Mahdi Ajallahu Ta'ala Faraj al-Sharif was the Imam at 5. But our test is believing and following in an Imam that we cannot see with our eyes. And that the hadith proves. Over 100 verses of Quran talk about Mahdawism, for example, Mahdawiyah. But we prove it from hadith. Even the tradition talks about Qaybatul Sughra, Qaybatul Kubra, for example. In how many traditions? We have maybe 800, 900, almost 1,000 narrations about Imam al-Zaman, Ajallahu Ta'ala Farajah al-Sharif. Ahl Sunnah also have narrations that he will be of the progeny of Imam Hussein, progeny of Sayyidina Fatima, and, for example, the name of Rasulullah. But we are the ones who believe that he is born. So during this time, if we want to relate the trials, tonight's topic is what was the main trial during the time of Imam Jawad alayhi salam, it was believing in an Imam that was 8 years of age. We also are being tried in a different way, but let's examine the life of Imam Jawad alayhi salam, how Allah then made it clear for them that this is the Imam of the age. One of the ways that Allah made it clear was by the knowledge that Imam Jawad alayhi salam gave and had. They bring forward one of the great scholars of Ahlul Sunnah, one of the big judges, and his name is Al-Qadi Yahya ibn Aktham, and they say to debate, and Ma'mun knows, the knowledge of Imam Jawad alayhi salam, or maybe he wanted to test the knowledge of Imam Jawad alayhi salam. So he says, do you permit me to ask a question? And the narration it says, and the Imam answers, ask whatever you wish. They're the only ones who said, ask whatever you wish, or ask before you lose me, for example. Everyone else, their ignorance is more than their knowledge. Everyone, if you ask us right now, how much do you know and how much do you not know? What you don't know is more than your knowledge, obviously. They asked Shaykh Murtada Ansari one question, he says, I don't know. Khatam al-Fuqaha. They asked him another question. They said, then why do you have your amama? He says, I have my amama for things I know. I don't have it for things I don't know. I have my amama for things I know. But even someone like Shaykh Ansari, when it comes to all of Kainat, the shuyukh, you see that not what we know is less than what we don't know. So therefore, we see that Imam Jawad was the one who says, ask me whatever you want. So now he's going to ask a difficult question. He is a judge. Says, what is your verdict about a man who indulges in hunting while he is in the state of ihram? And right now is the time of Hajj. Imagine someone who is muhrim and he goes hunting while he is in state of ihram, what he is not allowed to do. It's one of the muharramat of ihram. Then the Imam, once replied, your question is vague. Your question is vague. You should have definitely mentioned whether he hunted within the jurisdiction of Kaaba or outside. So the Imam brings, and when someone is very precise and has knowledge, he knows that one question has multiple different scenarios. You can't just say what is, for example, the ruling. That is for someone who has basic knowledge, but the one who has complete knowledge asks these questions, says, you're vague. Was it within the jurisdiction of Kaaba or outside? 2, was he literate or was he illiterate? 3, was he a slave or was he free? 4, was he a minor or was he a major? 5, was it for his first time or did he do it previously? 6, whether that was a victim, what he hunted, for example, was a bird or some other creature. Whether that prey was small or big, whether it was done at day or night, whether the hunter repented after his action or persisted doing it, whether he hunted secretly or openly, whether the ihram was done in Umrah or was the ihram of Hajj. So unless all these points are explained, no specific answer can be given. Which one of these is it? And then Qadi Yahya becomes staggering, listening to these words of the Imam, and he, is dumbfounded completely. He does not know what to say from all these different conditions. What? The Imam Jawad alayhi salam was, at a very young age, someone who was a Qadi, one of the judges, for example. So therefore we see that Imam Jawad alayhi salam proved throughout history that the knowledge that he has is obviously not knowledge that is researched, it is knowledge that is given by God. But what is our trial and what is our test? Our test is to be strong when it comes to imamat, to be firm when it comes to imamat, because we know that the time of ghaibat will be prolonged. And sometimes Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam, in tradition, Sadira Sayyida, if he comes to him, they see him, he's crying as if he's lost someone. And he's crying for the time of occultation, that it would last so long that people would leave the faith. Such a time that Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam, 1,000 years before, was crying about us. Or the traditions that say the time of occultation, the followers will be orphans, will be yatim. That they call us Aitam al Muhammad, we're orphans. So whenever you help someone in your community, whenever you help a follower of Ahlul Bayt, know that you're helping a yatim. When you're teaching students, for example, we had our graduation ceremony this year and we had so many wonderful teachers, that they are doing what Imam Ali alayhi salam told us to do about the Aitam, for example. Because they're helping the Aitam al Muhammad, those who their Imam cannot be seen or is not seen in front of them. So what can we do? One, the first responsibility that we have during this great trial, and we see in the tradition that it will be prolonged from the tradition from Imam Sajjad alayhi salam to Abu Khalid al-Kabuli, one of the narrators who is from Kabul, and one of the great companions of Imam Sajjad. He mentions about the prolonged time of the ghaiba, and then he mentions to him the tradition that at this time, those who are during this time period are the best. أفضل من أهل كل زمان. They're the best of every time period. And he says, why are they the best time period? Those who have intidar, those who have belief, قائلين بإمامته, they stay fast on imamat. It says they are the best of the people of any time period. It says because Allah أعطاهم من العقول, God has granted them intellect, that you have come to believe from white and black, how the tradition says white and black. What is white and black? Writing. Your iman is based off your research and thought and your aql. And this is one of the great achievements of mankind, to base his beliefs on what he demonstrates from his mind. Because seeing and hearing in the five senses is a lower form of knowledge. Just to see to believe, just to hear to believe. That is the lowest form of knowledge. Animals have that. But higher than this is if you can come to certainty and yaqeen, not with seeing or hearing, with your uqul, with your intellect. And says their intellect is so strong, wal afham, their understanding is so great, wal ma'rafa, their knowledge, their deep knowledge is so great, ma sarat bihi al-ghayba indahum bimanzilat al-mushahida. For them, the occultation is equal to seeing, is equal to being able to survive without, for example, being able to see their imams, as we see today. How many believers we have, how many followers we have of the Imam of the age, that they are so strong that whether they see the Imam or do not see him, they have the same, for example, belief in him. How many of our ulama, our mujahideen, our different solahan, virtuous people we had, that they were on the right path of imamat, regardless if it's 1,000 years after the ghaibat or not. So one of the trials that we face is facing the Imam that we cannot see. But how does the Imam Zainul Abidin talk about the best of the awaiters? Is those who have uqul and afham and ma'rafa and understanding. It's as if their ghaiba, for example, is mushahida, witnessing. During the time of Shaykh al-Saduq, one of our great scholars, who's buried in south of Tehran, or the city of Ray. He was a phenomenal scholar, and some say that he was actually from the prayer of the Imam that he was born, because his father was asking one of the companions, for example, for me to have a son, and the letter comes back that you will have a son, for example, and later on Shaykh al-Saduq was born. He wrote many different books, hundreds of books. One of our main books that we have in hadith and fiqh is Man la yahduruhu al-faqih, is for whoever does not have a faqih, for example, whoever does not have a jurist. He is one of the 4 main books of hadith. And also one of the other books he has is Kamaluddin wa Tamamun Ni'mah. This is a 2-volume book in English. You can look at about it. If you ever read the introduction and see why Shaykh al-Saduq wrote this book, you see that one of the scholars approaches him, and he was a big, important scholar. And he, after the time of Shaykh al-Saduq, I believe he lived around, for example, passed away 380, for example. The Imam was born in around 255. Imam Hassan Askar alayhi salam was martyred at 260. So around 100 years has only passed after Imam Zaman was born. Imam Hassan Askari has passed away, only 100 years. That some of the ulama and scholars began to doubt about Imam of Zaman. They're just wondering what's going on. Why do we not see? Why is the ghaibat taking so long? It's only been, say, 100 years. So therefore he speaks with Shaykh al-Saduq, and he brings narration, hadith. And he asks him, well, why don't you write this down? And then he has a dream of his master. He mentions, I have a dream of my master. His Mawla, Imam al-Zaman, comes to him and tells him in the dream, why don't you write a book about me, for example? And he says, I have different books about you. He says, no, in this way, I'm just paraphrasing, that you write about the occultation of other prophets. Tell them that other prophets were separated from their people as well. That we have in the story of Prophet Musa, this salat that we prayed tonight. Hopefully you didn't do in congregation, do bid'ah and innovation. We were doing it singular, inshallah. So when you say, وَوَعَدْنَا مُوسَى ثَلَاثِينَ لَيْلَةً, and we promised Musa 30 days, وَأَتْمَمْنَاهَا بِعَشْرٍ, and we added, 10, وَتَمَّ مِقَاتُ فَتَمَّ مِقَاتُ رَبِّهِ 40 لَيْلَةً, so that meeting with Allah and Prophet Musa alayhi salam became 40, 40 days, for example, 40 nights. So therefore you see that after that 30, for the Bani Israel, just 30, he's supposed to meet with Allah, became 10 more days. Bani Israel said that Prophet Musa alayhi salam is dead, for example. They made up rumors, or he's not coming back. And then they followed Samiri, just 10 days added. So prophets had occultation. Prophets had a separation from their people. So in this tradition of Kamaluddin wa Tamam Ni'mah, Shaykh al-Saduq is told in the tradition, why don't you write a book that explains that the separation and the occultation of other prophets amongst their people. So therefore you see that we also have this test to believe in the Imam of the age, but we're going to use our aql and uqul, because we said this is the highest level of ma'rifah, this is the highest level of understanding. This is what insan does. When you look at some of the traditions from Imam Jawad alayhi salam, you see that also we can use some of these traditions and hadith for our time period, for our trial. One of them is this very interesting tradition. What can we do during the ghaibat? What can we do during our trial? Imam Jawad gives a very interesting tradition, and maybe you haven't heard this tradition. Man asgha ila natiqin faqad abada. Whoever listens attentively to a speaker has worshipped him. Who are you guys worshipping right now? Man asgha ila natiqin faqad abada. Whoever listens attentively to a speaker has worshipped him. What do you mean? This is shirk? This is polytheism? What's going on? Let's read the tradition. فَإِنْ كَانَ النَّاطِقُ عَنِ اللَّهِ فَقَدْ عَبَدَ اللَّهِ. But if the speaker speaks on behalf of Allah, about Allah, they have worshipped Allah. وَإِنْ كَانَ النَّاطِقُ يَنْتِقُ عَنْ لِسَانِ إِبْلِيسِ. But if he speaks from behalf of shaitan or Iblis, فَقَدْ عَبَدَ إِبْلِيسِ. He has worshipped Iblis. Brothers and sisters, what does this narration teach us from my limited understanding is that we have to be very careful who we listen to. We have to be very careful where we seek our knowledge from during the occultation. This hadith is from Imam Jawad. It says, whoever listens to someone has worshipped him. So you have to be careful that whoever you listen to, are they presenting to you Quran and Hadith, Quran and Sunnah of the Prophet and his Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, or are they making things up, for example, or just saying this possibly this is right, or sometimes giving you fake Hadith, for example, or giving you false interpretations of Quran. Like many different groups today that you see in the name of the Imam al-Zaman, they come out and they say, for example, I am in some way related to the Imam, for example, I'm part of his message, of his uprising. Whoever listens to someone has worshipped him. Sometimes when it comes to lectures, for example, on YouTube, or it comes to podcasts, we're not really careful what we listen to, where we seek our knowledge from. We listen to whatever we want. Would you do this with your own food? You take food from whatever source that was, for example, if it's polluted or not, or if it was najis or tahir or halal. No, with food we're very careful. But how come we're not careful from who we seek knowledge from? So one way that we can use the hadith of Imam Jawad alayhi salam during our trial these days is, who do I seek my knowledge from? Who do I listen to? Because you have worshipped that person. And if he is right and if he is good, you have worshipped Allah. And it's one of the best a'mal, best actions. But if, God forbid, it is something that today you see many different speakers and many different people that they try to push you with algorithms, for example, to watch them, to listen to them. And there's nothing but inhiraf and misguidance, then you have worshipped the shaitan, God forbid. The second hadith that I'll mention tonight and will conclude is a hadith that we need each other during the time of occultation. We need brotherhood, we need sisterhood. We need to be united with one another. And I remember myself being raised in the US as a young person. What kept me firm? Even though as a college student, you could do whatever you want. You have your own, for example, dorm, or you have your own apartment. You could do whatever you want. But what kept me firm was brotherhood. Because the tradition says, if you want to be good, be with those that are good. During the time of occultation, brothers and sisters, we have to stay united. We have to be together. We can't make up, for example, rumors about one another. We can't speak ill about one another. We have to grow spiritually together. The tradition from Imam Jawad alayhi salam, because we're running out of time, I'll just say it. Mulaqatul ikhwan, and this is in Bihar. Mulaqatul ikhwan nashra. Meaning that meeting with brothers brings liveliness. Brings liveliness. وَتَلْقِيهٌ لِلْعَقْلِ, and is enrichment of the intellect, sitting with your brothers, as long as, inshallah, you talk about hadith, Quran, what's going on today, what we can do as a community, how can we help each other out. Not just about dunya, money. Unfortunately, sometimes you see brothers are gathering, but there's talk about everything but Allah and religion and deen. Talk about everything but religion and deen and imams. Is enrichment of the aql, intellect, even if it is brief and little. In kana nazran qalila. So what does meeting your brothers do? It is liveliness, nashra, too, and it increases the aql. So therefore, the second recommendation that I have for us as a community is to be friends with one another, be close to one another, and keep your conversations Islamic, and sit with one another and discuss what can we do as a community, what can we do, what is the future, for example, of Islam in Southern California, for example. So therefore, we ask Allah to help us during this important trial, just how you have, helped those during the trial of Imam Jawad alayhi salam. If we can dim the lights, we will now do tawassul, because it is not only about remembering Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, it's also about crying for them. Not only about learning from them, but also crying for them. There's an interesting hadith that actually today I came across with in Dala'il al-Imama from Tabari, the Shia Tabari. It's an interesting hadith. It talks about Imam Jawad alayhi salam and his reflection at maybe the age of 4. If you ever want to know what was Imam Jawad alayhi salam thinking about, Imam al-Taqi, when he was 4 years old. The tradition has here that it says the narrators is Zakaria ibn Adam, one of the great narrators who's buried in Qom, and there's a cemetery called Shaykhan. He is one of the greats who's buried in Zakaria ibn Adam. Someone, they say, would spend his time, Imam Rida would give him so much time, like the entire night he would address his questions and have converse with Zakaria ibn Adam. We don't have time, I'll talk later on about one of the great companions of Imam Jawad, of Imam Rida alayhi salam, Zakaria ibn Adam. He says, this narrator says, he narrated to me, قال إني كنت عند الإمام رضا عليه السلام. I was with Imam Rida alayhi salam when Abu Ja'far was brought in, and his age was less than 4. وسنه أقل من 4 سنين. He was less than 4. فضرب بيده إلى الأرض. Imam Jawad alayhi salam would strike his hand on the ground, would hit his hand on the ground. And it says, وَرَفَعَ رَأْسَهُ إِلَى السَّمَاءِ. And he would take his head and would raise it towards the sky. فَأَطَالَ الْفِكْرِ. And he would think and contemplate. Imam Jawad at the age of 4. Hit his hand, look in the sky, and he would contemplate. فَقَالَ لَهُ الْإِمَامِ الرِّضَى عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ. What a sweet time they had when in Medina, Imam Rida alayhi salam with Imam Jawad. And he was asking, he says, may I be ransomed? His father says, بِنَفْسِ أَنْتَ. Imam Jawad, Imam Rida alayhi salam loves Imam Jawad. They say if you want to put Imam Rida, you go to Mashhad to put him in a corner to get your hawa'ij or get your haja. Ask him on behalf of Imam Jawad. Ask him on behalf of Imam Jawad. Inshallah, you get your hajat answered. What are you thinking about, for example? Fima, and the answer is, بِنَفْسِ أَنْتَ فِيمَا طَالَ فِكْرُكَ. Why are you occupied? Why are you thinking, O son? And then he says, فِيمَا صُنِعَ بِأُمِّ فَاطِمَةَ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ. He's 4 years old and saying what they did to my mother Fatima to Zahra alayhi salam. How many years? 195 Hijri, around 200 years. This is 200 Hijri. Rasulullah passed after the 10th of Hijri, 11th of Hijri. So this is about 100 something, 90 years later. Imam Jawad is saying, فِيمَا صُنِعَ بِأُمِّ فَاطِمَةَ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ. I was thinking about what was done to my mother Fatima alayhi salam. And I was thinking this, أَمَّا وَاللَّهِ لَأُخْرِجَنَّهُمَا. That I would take them out of their graves, that I would burn them, I would scatter their ashes, that I will completely annihilate them in the sea. I was thinking about this, that those who harmed my mother Fatima to Zahra, I would take their bodies, burn them, and throw them in the sea. Then it continues, so Imam Rida alayhi salam brought him near and kissed him between his eyes. It says he brought him close. وَقَبَّلَ بَيْنَ عَيْنَيْهِ. He kissed him here. قَالَ بِأَبِي أَنْتَ وَأُمِّي. May your father and mother be ransom for you. أَنْتَ لَهَا. You are indeed for it. يعني الإمامة. You are for imamah. Because you are thinking of your mother Fatima al-Zahra. You are thinking of their killers and those who abused her. You are doing tawalli and tabarri. You are for it. أنت لها يعني الإمامة. May our salawat and salutations be upon Imam Jawad alayhi salam. We ask Allah inshallah to give us the ziyarat of Imam Jawad and Qadimiyya, to give us inshallah the shafa'at of Imam Jawad alayhi salam. May Allah increase you because of Imam Jawad, increase your rizq and barakat inshallah in this dunya and akhirah inshallah. May Allah make us of those who hold on tight to the rope of Allah, who hold on to imamah during the time of occultation, and expedite the return of the Imam with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajabaj.